case counts began to skyrocket, and unfortunately, some people who contracted COVID early on are still dealing with the after effects. Fox journalist Austin Williams spoke with one of those people. Her name's Amy Watson. She's a preschool teacher. She lives in Portland, Oregon. Austin first connected with Watson back in June of 2020, and now nearly a year later, they spoke again because she's still dealing with serious symptoms from the virus. Here's part of their conversation.
Nine months since we did our last interview, and I remember that at that point, you had been experiencing COVID-like symptoms for almost 3 months at the time. You got your first, it's coming up on a year that you first started feeling ill, correct?
Really close to a year. Today is day 353, yeah. So March 15th will be my 1 year mark.
Wow. And you detailed some of the symptoms to me then. I was wondering if maybe you could get into, what were some of the symptoms you were feeling back in June, and how have they evolved or developed, or how are you feeling now?
Oh boy. Well, some things are a little better, thanks to some medications that have been prescribed to help with things like hypertension, which is new to me post-COVID. I've always had pretty low blood pressure. Chronic migraines are also a lovely post-COVID gift that I've been given, that a migraine prevention medication is helping with, as well as a stimulant that I'm taking to help with fatigue, so that I can make it through a day without napping. Those have all been super helpful. Some symptoms are the same as they have been. My POTS symptoms, positional orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, which I haven't been officially diagnosed with because no one has tested me. But my changes in my heart rate escalating are still pretty consistent. I wear an Apple Watch, and it will let me know when my heart rate is over 100 when I'm seemingly doing nothing. Especially like things like showering for some reason really triggers that heart rate elevation. One of the unexpected gifts that COVID has brought was at my 7-month mark, a whole big bunch of GI symptoms, and I won't go into that, but I am going through a workup and have some procedures scheduled in the near future to try to sort that out. So some things have gotten better, some things have gotten worse. My temperature is still elevated every single day, and isn't creeping quite as high as often, thankfully. I haven't been over 101 in a while now. Every once in a while I'll get right up to that point, but most days it's around 100, between 100 and 101. So,
did you take your temperature today?
I did. Yeah, it's about 100. It's usually like, yeah.
Wow. And tell me a little bit about. You said you are going to begin to participate in an NIH study.
Yeah, I am actually participating in a few different NIH studies, but the most notable one is a neurologic study that I'll actually travel to Bethesda to participate in. And, this is not a great time for travel. I live on the West Coast and he'll have to travel to the East Coast. But I can't get the testing that I need from my healthcare provider to help provide the answers that will guide potential treatment. So it's worth it to me. And also because I want to contribute to the science and help figure out why this is happening. So I will be jetting to DC sometime in the near future. They've just revised the study to incorporate some more autonomic testing. So they have me kind of on hold for a minute while they get that all lined up.
Okay. And I remember, so you started a COVID long haulers Facebook group back in April. How is that going?
Busy, very busy. A lot of folks just keep turning up. I think we're creeping up on 14,000 members in about 100 countries.
Wow.
We've got a couple different groups depending on the onset of illness, and are getting ready to launch another. We're also working on some advocacy work that's kind of outside of those groups with the Long COVID Alliance that we are members of. We also have a medical and scientific collaboration group, which is a place for researchers and doctors to post links to studies that they want to invite long haulers to participate in, and where long haulers can find out about those and get connected.
How does it feel now? I think when we were first speaking, it was still baffling medical experts, and now it's pretty understood that this is a real thing that is impacting people. How does it feel now to have that sort of validation? Or do you feel like there is validation at this point?
I do. And validation, honestly, is everything. It doesn't quite make up for all of the denial that we faced early on, where people were saying the virus can't do this. It's like, oh, well, you haven't met COVID yet, and COVID is a trickster and can present all kinds of different symptoms from person to person. And I think one of the challenges is that it's so unpredictable.
All right, that was Austin Williams there speaking with Amy Watson. Really informative. We're going to bring in Austin right now, actually. He's live with us on NewsNOW from Fox. Austin, thanks for being with us tonight. I have a few questions for you because that was a really, really interesting interview. My one question, though, first, what types of symptoms is Amy still seeing? You kind of went over some of those right there, but you spoke to her for well over 30 minutes.
Yeah, as you saw right there, very tragic story, and some other long haulers are dealing with it much worse than she is. But like she said, the main things are she's had a fever for every day for since she first fell ill in March. And mind you, she first fell ill in March. She wasn't able to get tested nearly 2 months into her illness, and then in April she tested positive for COVID, and that was testament to the poor testing issues that the country faced at the beginning of the pandemic. As far as other symptoms, she has, like she said, she has severe migraines, or some of the newer issues that she's dealt with, migraines and gastrointestinal issues, and tachycardia issues or elevated heart rate. We actually spoke to a Columbia professor back in June who had experienced her own series of long-term illnesses, long-term symptoms after having COVID-like a COVID-like illness. And she was studying long-term effects, and she herself ended up getting some of these long-term effects. And one of them was tachycardia, which is an elevated heart rate just from doing normal activities. So, as she said, just from showering, the Columbia professor that we interviewed, Maddie Hornig, just from sitting at her computer desk, had an elevated heart rate way above a normal heart rate.
Yeah, and Austin, you're right. A lot of people, I think, kind of forget that there was essentially no testing regimen in place back in March and April all over the country. It took a while for the COVID test to even be manufactured, to even be accurate. Remember, there was so many issues with that. Talk a little bit, though, about her daily pill regimen. It's quite extensive.
Yeah, it is quite shocking. Nearly 200 pills per week. She didn't go into specific detail as to, what pills she was taking for what specific symptom. She said she was taking stimulants for the fatigue that she experiences. And another kind of problem that happens with some of these long haulers is she was prescribed medication for skin problems. Some COVID long haulers have been reporting something called COVID toes and various other skin related problems where they experience a burning sensation underneath their skin due to inflammation. And that's something that she experienced. She took medication for that, which helped, but has caused her to experience nausea almost every day from the medication that she's taking for that. So not only are, some of the medications she's taking are helping and putting some of these illnesses at bay, but they're adding new problems that she has to deal with every day.
Austin, yeah, that's a great point that you made, that the problems are just numerous in all parts of the body, really. But what type of physical therapy is Amy and other COVID long haulers like her going through? Can they go through physical therapy?
Right. So yeah, one of the problems that she said she experiences in her healthcare network, there are no long haul treatment centers, and there have been reports they're far and few between, so they're not very available for most people. So essentially, her going to the NIH study is one of the first opportunities she has to maybe hopefully get some real treatment. Essentially, she said in the interview, when she first found out that this was going to be something she would have to deal with possibly for the rest of her life, her doctors essentially kind of just told her, survive. It's a day by day thing for her. So as far as treatment, she wears an Apple Watch to track her heart rate for the elevated heart rate issues, and she takes a really shocking regimen of pills every day. But as far as treatment, medical professionals are still baffled by this, so it's really a matter of her taking it easy, not putting herself through so much strain that she overworks herself.
So what you're kind of saying is this has impacted almost every aspect of her daily life. How often does she think about this day to day? Is this just now, ubiquitous in her life? Can she not? Does she ever have a time when she can just relax and not think about this?
No, I mean, it is a really, really tragic story. Her and thousands of other people are dealing with this and will probably have to deal with this for the rest of her life. At the beginning, she explained the most difficult thing was the isolation. It's a very isolating experience, and that's why she started a Facebook group to support a lot of people going through this. And I got to admit, when I first started writing this story, this was not reported on very much, and I was finding these Facebook groups to support COVID long haulers, is what they call themselves. And again, because of the lack of infrastructure with testing, it was really hard to believe that the things that these people were saying that they were going through were possible, because many people thought that COVID is just a simple respiratory illness, and they're finding that it's not. So at the very beginning, she felt invalidated and was going to doctors who were baffled and telling her, no, there's no way. Luckily, she has a COVID test, got a COVID test to prove that these long-term symptoms were related. But many people, because of that horrible testing infrastructure in the beginning, they didn't get the positive COVID test. So a lot of these symptoms, they couldn't prove that they're even related. And there's people that are dealing with this still, and they don't have the same validation that she did. And another problem that comes in line with that is that the CARES Act covers a lot of these people's financial bills, medical bills. And because some people weren't able to get a test, either they got a false negative or whatever, they are left with astronomical bills because people can't prove that the symptoms they are now dealing with possibly for the rest of their life are even related to COVID. But yeah, so for her, having a close connection with a community that she started on Facebook, and it started with maybe 8 people, and now it's tens of thousands of people from 100 countries. That has, for her, I believe, been the biggest support for her during this entire experience.
Yeah, that's great now that there is somewhat of a online community where COVID so-called long haulers can kind of voice their frustrations with the symptoms that they're still feeling. But you're right, it must be very, very isolating, especially amongst those who have had the coronavirus, who recover quite quickly or who test positive, yet they're asymptomatic. For those members of the population who, didn't contract COVID and those who did and got over it quite quickly, it would be hard for them to even understand what these COVID long haulers are going through. And like you said, I'm struck by the fact that we are only just 1 year after the very beginnings of the pandemic, and you've alluded to this multiple times, that they could be living with this 5, 10, 20, 30 years down the road, depending on how old these patients are. And so my last question for you, Austin, what's next, do you think, for Amy Watson? Is there any kind of relief at the end of this? Any positivity at the end of this?
Yeah, so specifically for Amy Watson, when I spoke with her 9 months ago, she felt a little defeated because it was still, we interviewed another medical expert in another story and asked them if they knew anything about long haulers, and they didn't, at that point in June, they didn't know anything about it. Now, nearly a year into the pandemic, it's been recognized by Dr. Anthony Fauci. There are still some symptoms that many long haulers report that are still not recognized by the CDC, but the fact that the NIH and Dr. Anthony Fauci have recognized that this is a real thing impacting thousands of people has been a big relief for her. So she's going to be participating in a study at the National Institutes of Health in Bethesda, Maryland. And not that there's any possibility of any real change, but hopefully they'll better understand what she's going through, and hopefully there's some light at the end of the tunnel. Like I said, as for many others, she's one of thousands of people that deal with this. There might not be an end for some of these long haulers.
All right, Austin William there, who has been tracking this story for the better part of the year. We thank you for bringing it on News Now. Appreciate it. We'll see you again.